we following along?
You can if you want to. If you guys do want to follow along, we'll take breaks in between, and I'll have to just walk around, make sure everybody's up to date with everything that's going on. But that's totally your call. Okay, so we're just going to run through, like I said, basic Angular structure of a Angular app, and then we're going to go through like the different functions, some main functions that you'll be using when you're using Angular. And then if we have time, we'll dive into some other stuff. I really want to show you guys too the big thing that I really want to show you is how to connect your components and how your bindings will be with those components. So how do you get your components to interact with each other? So the first thing we're going to do is I already made a directory. Hello. I made a directory, cd this, and then we're just going to, I'll make another one, main prod 1, cd into that. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an HTML page. So we're going to touch index.html. Boom. We'll open that in Atom. All right. We'll close this. So here, right, we're going to break out our standard HTML tablet or structure. What you need to do next is you need to link the HTML page to the Angular version that you want to use. We're using 1.6, so what you got to do for that is go to AngularJS. AngularJS is Angular 1.0. So right here, if you click, you saw me click download. Right here is the CDN for that. Right, you're just gonna copy that. Go back to your wrong one. Boop. Haha. And then I believe, is it a link? It is a JS, so it's a script. JS requires a script. Okay. So now we have AngularJS right here. What's up?
Source.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Source. Yes. Okay. So if we load this page, we just want to make sure that it's a standard Angular document. It's not going to, a standard Angular document will evaluate 4 plus 5 to equal 9. However, this will just show the curly brackets 4 plus 5, right? It won't actually be an Angular app. To initiate this as an Angular app, you need to go to the HTML page, or part up here, the first HTML tag, right, ng app. And then we'll set this equal to like inbox app, Thank you. Yes. Okay. Great. So now if we open this, I assume all of you guys have Light Server. If you don't, it's really easy to install. It's npm install -g Light Server. Cool. So we'll open this. It'll pop up and look, oh no, we're getting 4 plus 5. We must not have initialized this as a standard app yet. Yeah. Maybe this has to go.
If you just take out the inbox app for equals for the time being, because we haven't made that yet, it's looking for that.
Oh, for sure. You're right. Hey, that's really cool. I did not know that. So now we know that, guys. That's important. Okay. So we just initialized our first Angular app, and it's evaluating the expressions. So that's important. I'm going to put this back up here, and we're going to create our first basic component structure. What I like to do is I like to create a new folder, call it JS for JavaScript, and then inside of here, I create an app.js file, right? Now, this is also important. This is why the 4 plus 5 wasn't working, is because we didn't set this up. To initialize it, you say angular.module, right? And then you're going to tell it what module you're loading. In this case, it is whatever's listed right here. Whatever you decided to call your app is going to be placed right here in module. After this is where you put your square brackets. This is where you would put dependencies such as like ng route, ng animate, and so forth. So we just go like that. 4 plus 5 is still being a dick, and that's because when you create that app, you now have to bring it in a script tag down at the bottom.
Also have your app.js, it's a mod. You have index app. Wrong.
Oh, you're so right. Haha, you're so right. Thank you, thank you. You guys are great pair programmers. It's really helping me out.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Shut up, Kyle. The source for this is going to be in JS app.js. And now we're getting 9. So that was successful. I like to keep these all like this, just so it's easier for me. Okay, so the great thing is that we've now initialized this as an Angular app. We're going to pull in our first component. We're going to make our first component for this. How I like to do this is I like to take very basic steps. Basic baby steps. Inside here, we're going to create a new folder, and we'll call this, I know that this is going to be like our inbox eventually, so I'm just going to call this message. So our message component. Inside of this, we'll create a new folder or a new file. We'll call it, for good naming conventions, we're going to say message.component.js. Okay? We now just initialized another JS document inside, okay? And this is going to be our component. To create a component and to write out a component structure, the first thing you're going to do is declare what module you're going to be affecting. So angular.module. And you're going to say, just like we did before, it was inbox app, right? And unlike before, you don't need the square brackets, right? You don't need that. Underneath, this is where you're gonna identify what your component name is. Oh yeah, yes, of course I can.
That's great.
Is that good? Is that big enough?
Yeah, I was hoping it would do it actually in the file tree, but that's okay.
Sorry. Yeah,
You're good.
thanks. Okay. Inside .component, this is where we're going to tell it what the name of our component is going to be. For the case of education, we're going to do a camel case thing. We'll call it component is message inbox, right? Components take 2 parameters, because it's a function. Takes in a string how you're going to reference this this component, and then what this component consists of. The second parameter is going to be an object, and this is where you'd put in the template, right? If you guys seen Brooke's video, you know that template is going to be in a string, right? And you can do like an h1 tag, right? And then inside here we can be like Naruto. So that's our basic template, but that's not enough. We need to bring that component to the main page. This is why I did camel case. This is where we're going to implement that. Back in our index, right, underneath the 4 plus 5, we're going to do mess dash inbox. What's inbox? Help me out, guys.
Yep.
Cool, thank you so much. Okay, so it's going to be that and inbox. Okay, so if we save this, if we see it on our page, we won't see anything. And that's because we didn't bring our component script to the index page. You need to do this in Angular 1.6. I'm not sure if you need to do this in newer Angular versions, but you do need to run a script tag and pull that source in where that component is. So for any component you make and any controller you make, you need to bring in a script tag to reference that to the index page. So we named it, right, the path to this is JS and then message.component.js. Okay? Assuming I spelled that right, we should see Naruto! Yeah, Naruto for the win. He's the best. Okay, guys, so we now know that we have this script hooked up and that it's working, right? The template is working. What I like to do, though, is I like to have an HTML specific for that template, right? So what we're going to do is inside the message folder that we've created, right, because this is our message component, we're going to create a message.template.html, okay? Now inside here, you can put an H1 tag, and we'll say like Keyblade, right? Just to see if it's working, right? Nothing. I don't want to do anything crazy yet. I just want to make sure that what I'm sending to the page is going to be sent. Back in our component is where we pull in that. We have to change template from template to URL, right? Make sure that URL is not capitalized, because then it reads it wrong. If it was template, if it's like this, it reads it like template dash URL, like this. Whoop. If it's with a capital, then it's template template dash U dash R dash L, and it's like, what is that? And it took me like a little bit to figure that out, and I'm sure it took some of you guys a little bit to figure that out too. But maybe it didn't. Anyways, a little tidbit of information. Let's move on. Okay, so yes, of course you can. So this is my app.js. It's nested outside of the message folder. And all I'm doing here is just telling it what Angular app I'm going to be working with. Is this how yours looks?
Yes.
Okay. Back in our template, we got that. Back in our component, right, where we put template URL, we're going to basically do the same thing that we did before when we were sourcing out our scripts on the index page. We're going to say JS message / message dot template dot HTML. We save that, and if everything looked good, we got Keyblade. Hallelujah! So that's working. That's working great. The great thing about this project is that they already kind of built some stuff out for us, right? So I want to bring the inbox, all that stuff, to the main page. So back over here, I'll Slack this out to you guys. This is the seed data for the project. Where are we here? Okay. When you load the page, it's going to look like this. It's going to have the style guide. It's going to show you what everything should look like when certain things are true. Okay? For this sake, we're going to start out with a message that's unread and unstarred. Okay? So I'm just going to copy this HTML, right? I'm going to copy that beautiful sucker. I'm going to throw it right in our template for the message. Okay? Save that. And then if we go back to our main page, we'll see that we now have this beautiful thing here. I think it's a good time right now to bring in the CSS of the page as well. If you go back here, you can see up at the top, they have components, which is where we are right now. And then they have a CSS thing here. Right here, we're going to copy all this beautiful jazz, and we're going to paste it into a new document. I'm going to put this just like in my main folder, right? We'll call it main.css, and then we'll paste it in. All right, let me know if I'm moving a little too fast. We'll save it, okay? And now that we have this main CSS page made, we can go to our index, and we can pull it in as a link here. Style sheet, and then the directory is in the main one, so you just do main.css, just like that. Okay. So, back in our local host, we now have a bold font, which is exactly what we want for any unread messages. So it's working. That's good. That's brilliant. Let's also pull in Bootstrap for this as well, because Bootstrap is also necessary for this product, for this project. So, Bootstrap, right? What's up, boy?
Can I see your message.template.html?
You want to see the template?
Yes. Message.template. Yes. Okay. I must have missed them all. Sorry,
No. You can. It is. You can find it here. If you go to the style guide, click on components, right? It's going to be under message unread. And then I literally just copied this whole thing and pasted it into the template. So if you want, I'll just Slack this out too.
That's just the first message entry,
Yeah, that's all that's in message.template or message template HTML.
I'm with you now, Matt.
Cool.
Thank you.
So let's get Bootstrap in there because Bootstrap is required for the project. Now, the first time I did this, I did 4.0 beta, and we found out that broke a lot of stuff. What's really cool is you can go over here to where it says 4.0 and go down to 3.3.7. This is what you want. This is the one you want. Let's get started. If you go down here, you can see that this is the minified CSS one, and we don't need the JavaScript down here, but we basically just need this one, first one here, and we're going to copy this, and we're going to paste it into our index page. Bless you. Oh man, I hope you feel better. Okay, so now we got Bootstrap involved, right? We saved that. We go back here, we can see that now it's like one line across, which is what we wanted. That's what Bootstrap was able to do for us. Okay, well this is all great. We got our Bootstrap hooked up. We got our, and there's a reason that we use 3.3.7. I'm not sure if Glyphicon works for 4.0, but I know for sure it works for 3.3.7. Anyways, we'll get to that later. Right now, we're just going to focus on displaying all the messages that are in the database. Okay? Luckily for us, they created the seeds for that already. So if you go back to the inbox style guide, right, and you go up to the top, you'll see a link for seeds. If you click that, you'll see all the seeds are listed right here with most of the information that we want. So again, we're just going to copy this, right? Copy. And then back in Atom, this is where we're going to create our first controller for our component. Okay? Controllers are where you hold typically just like manipulating functions or hard-coded data. If you wouldn't put data like this that's from like an outsourced, like an API, you wouldn't put that in here. You would get an HTTP request and send an HTTP request to that database. But for the purpose of this project, we don't need to do that. All we need to do is what? Okay, follow along. We're good. Okay, we're gonna do a message.controller.js. It has to be a JS, and we're gonna initialize this kind of the same way that we initialize a component. We're gonna call what module we're working with, which is inbox.app. Oh, inbox app, not .app. It's just inbox app. Okay, and then unlike, it's the same thing with component. You don't need to put the square brackets in there. And then you put a .controller, right? And now this is where you're going to identify the name of your controller. For this, I guess we'll name it messages, right? So the controller's name is going to be messages. And then you're going to state after that what function you're going to be pulling, what function you're referencing as messages. We haven't created it yet, but we're going to create it inside this controller. For the sake of continuity, I'm just going to call this messages as well. Okay? Underneath that is where we're going to write our function messages. That is in turn going to be referenced as messages, as you can see in this string, right? And then pulled into our template URL or template HTML. And I'll show you guys how to do that too. But for first, let's write the function. Function messages, right, is this. So there it is. There's that. I saw a really cool thing for when you're writing messages, or not messages, so sorry, when you're writing your first function inside your controller. To save yourself time and make sure that you're not referencing anything outside of this scope or into deeper scopes, you want to create a constant in here, and you can name it whatever. Standard practice is it's VM is equal to this, right? At this point, this is where we can say we can label objects and other functions using this kind of naming convention, and you'll be using this naming convention I'm going to show you throughout the rest of this process, at least for inside of this function. We're going to do vm.inbox, right? Or VM mail. We'll do VM mail is equal to and then paste that shit in there. Okay? So we're telling that inside this function, there's a variable. The variable's name is called male, right? And male is equal to this entire array, okay? And it's an array of objects. You can see that it has the ID, the subject, and all this other stuff. What's good?
As far as like the closures, is that just for components? I couldn't remember if Brooks had it in someone's case. Like the parentheses around the whole functions.
Oh, that you're talking about like when he said the parentheses function and then he called it down at the bottom? That is a good practice to get into. I did not do that here, but it will work if you did that anyways. That is just so that nobody can like hack into your database and like screw a lot of stuff up, mess up with things and mess up with your functions and stuff. It's just an added security layer. Good practice though. I should really start doing that. But yes, good question. So we have this controller that we made. Inside this controller, we have a function called messages that we're now referencing as messages, right? And it has this object inside of it, or this array. It's called mail, an array of objects. If we go back, we can now reference this, these messages and this controller inside of our template. So back in our message template, right, what I like to do is create another div outside of the div that we just made. Okay, I'm going to pull this div all the way down to the bottom. Whoop, whoop. And then I'm just going to tab this over because it's going to bother me. Okay, so we have this thing. It's brilliant. I love it so much. Okay, this is where we're going to pull in our controller.js. And you reference that by saying the Angular method ngController. And you're going to set that equal to the name of the controller that you made. In this case, it is messages. So, controller's messages. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so that's nice. We're now pulling messages in. It's also good practice, right, that when you pull in a controller, you also give it something that's easier to reference it as. And you can do that by, at the end of the string, you add a space, do messages as CTRL, just like that, okay? If we go back to our page, you can see nothing's really changed, right? But this is where we start doing another function, another method. One of the great methods that Angular has inside of it is ngRepeat, which it will cycle through an array and display information as you want it. What I like to do for that is also create a div outside of the div we just created. So we have another div. We're going to call ngRepeat. And how ngRepeat works is you give it a placeholder. So mail, right? Mail, I believe it's in. And then you reference inside of your controller the, what's that word? You reference inside of your controller the variable that you declared equals your array of objects. So you're trying to say that mail inside CTRL.mail, because that's what we named it before, we're going to run this beautiful div here. Also, do not forget to make another div, /div at the bottom. Okay? And then you should be able to see, oh, nothing. And you know why? Do you guys know why?
We didn't script it into
Yes! That's exactly it! Yeah! Okay, sorry for screaming, but that was exciting. So back down here, that's exactly it, man. We're going to go like this. I just did Command-Shift-D, right? And then controller. You need to pull in any component you make and any controller you make as a script tag inside of your HTML. And now we have an array. We have a whole bunch of divs that were created from ngRepeat because there are that many instances inside that array. But now this is great. I mean, this is working, but this isn't the message that we want, right? We want to specify what that message name is, correct? How do we do that? Great question. I will show you. So, is everybody up to this point right now? Yeah? Where are you at?
Finishing up the ngRepeat.
Okay. ngRepeat is here. right? And then that takes in a placeholder. So we could say like, then this will come in handy for what we're about to do. You can look at my screen here if you need to be caught up, but we're just gonna keep going on. So down here where it said what I just delete in the A tag, right? We're gonna put in handlebars, right? And we're gonna say mail dot, and then if we go back over to our controller in messages, you will see that subject is what we want, right? So back over here, we're gonna use dot notation, and we're gonna say subject.
Why is it mail and not CTRL?
Because you're referencing each instance in CTRL mail as mail. So like, this is really just a placeholder. This could be like a Jamba juice, and then this will be Jamba G. Oh, poop. Okay, there you go. And then if we go back, you will see that all of our lists are now displaying the correct subject that we want. So that's incredible. We really like Angular, don't we? Angular is so powerful. I'm going to bring this back to mail and mail, just for. So that was just an instance of how you can use, how to connect your controller to your template and then display information that you've put into your controller. I know a lot of people were trying to get the subjects to highlight accordingly. You know, we can also work on that. You can see here the input type is checkbox, and this is what is being displayed here, right? Doop, 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 doop. But what we want is like every time that it's selected, we want to make that whole bar or that whole row, what's it called? Highlighted, right? So this also kind of goes back to the seeds. And if you go, not the seeds, but the components. And that's over here for message selected. So this is what a standard message is supposed to look like when it's selected. This also has, the difference between the old one and this one is that it has this new class here. Unstarred does not have selected in it, right? But message selected does, right? I was watching a video from the AngularJS website that showed how to do a standard to-do list. And whenever the guy clicked on the checkbox, it would put a line through the rest of whatever was in that to-do list and totally change the CSS. The way he did that was inside this div class up here, right? If we, he had referenced a class that he had made, right? And you can see here that everything's highlighted now because we put the select thing in. But what he did was, if it was true, right, he would affect it. Inside of our CSS that we've downloaded from the seeds or from our resources, you can go down here and you will see, where is it? Right here, message.selected, right, has this background. The way that the guy did it in the tutorial was he had made this equal to true, just like this. And then what he ended up doing was back over in our controller, in our template, not our controller, our template, he came down here and there's an ng model, right? We did check before, right guys? And then it didn't work. We ended up having to do model. So ng model gives us a way to do two-way binding with other things that are inside this document, right? So I want to make this very specific. It's just selected, right? Selected mail. I believe mail.selected. Thank you. That's it. That was the one. Thank you so much. Mail.selected. Did it need to be in parentheses or just like this? So what this is doing is it's saying for every instance in mail, right? Every instance in Jamba, right? We're going to go into Jamba, and if it's selected, this will be true, right? we can then reference that here by doing, this one does have to be squiggly brackets, Jamba.selected, right? I wonder if this might break. I guess we'll find out. No, well, it did break a little bit. That's because we changed. Yes.
You just
No!
fail every time.
Jamba. I should have done Jabba the Hutt, or Han Solo. Okay, but you can see now that because of our seeds had already had in there that it was selected if it was true. Selected is true. And then we basically took that information and made it available on the screen. That's how we did that. What I really want to talk to you guys about now is how to get your two components to talk to each other. That was a big deal that I had, and it will really be helpful for you guys, especially for future projects. So let's get started on that.
Can I catch up with what you just did?
You sure can.
It's absorbing.
Of course, of course.
So you absolutely need a dash true in CSS?
You do, because in the CSS document, I'll pull it down over here. In the CSS document, if you had this as just like this, it's not actually this class, because this class is now adding this value in Jamba.select, right, and selected. And Jamba.selected is true. So that's why it's coming out as message, or that's why it's select dash true. That's what it's coming out to be.
Okay.
So right now, like you can see, it's not highlighted, right? But if I add the true over here, cool. Now you can see that it's true. What's up? You got a question?
No, scratch my head.
Every time, Clark.
Tell me that.
Guys, come on.
Sorry.
Can't even scratch my head.
I see
No
it.
hands above the chin.
No hands above the chin. Sorry.
Then
Oh.
Why is it checked? Did you add something to
Why is it checked?
Yeah.
I put down here in the ng model, Jamba.selected. That's going to say true. That's going to respond as true. And so Angular has like a really interesting method in how to do this. There's two different ways that you can do it. The first way that I kind of played around with it was with ng checked. And if ng checked was true, it would check the box. It ran into later problems later down the line when I was trying to do select all. But I just wanted to show you guys the power of having, so yeah, that's why I use ng model here. And that's what makes it checked. Okay? So what we want to do now is we want to be able to talk from our main component or our inbox component and have it talk to another component that we're going to make right now. Another component that we needed to have was the toolbar, right? So let's start making, are you guys all caught up to this point? Everybody good? Cool beans? Okay, this is also being recorded, and then also I'm available on Slack if you guys have any other questions. So let's move on. Okay, in AngularJS, we're going to create a new folder because for every component we make, we should make a folder for that. It helps just organize things better and you don't have to jump all over and look for babies. Okay, so in here, we're going to name this toolbar. No missing babies. So I just called it toolbar. Inside of here, we're going to create another, first thing we're going to create is component. Toolbar.component. Okay? And then .js, obviously. JS is necesito. How do we set up a typical component application? Yes. So we're going to do angular.module. And then inside of this, what do we put?
Inbox app.
That's the one, yeah. We're going to reference the main app. We're going to reference the ng application that we're putting, that's like the module. Yes, you got it. That's the one. Yeah, that's what we do. Okay. After that, what do we do? What do we do after we initialize that connection? Yeah, I heard it. I heard it just twice. Yeah, dot component. So we're saying this is going to be a component. What do we want to name this? Toolbar? Toolbar? I'm going to do camel case again so that way we can get used to using the hyphenated, I think it's snake
Kebab case.
Kebab case. Kebab case. Yeah, that one. Kebab case. Okay. And then what component takes in two parameters? What's the second parameter? Object. Yes. Okay. So we have an object, and we're going to put the template URL here, right? And it takes a string. Okay. So we don't have that URL yet, but we know what it's. We don't have the file name yet, but we're going to just put the URL in anyways because it's not going to change. It's going to be JS toolbar, and then toolbar.template.html. Okay, so now we just have to create the toolbar HTML template. Okay, inside here we'll create the toolbar.template.html. Yeah, and now we have the toolbar template. I'm going to close this, and I'm also going to close app.js and some other things that I don't need. We won't need this. We won't need. We'll need that. We won't need. We'll keep that. Why not? Whatever. Okay. So, good thing for us that they already made the HTML for the toolbar template. So let's go pull that information. Back over here, right, in our inbox style component, style guide component, you can see all over here we have toolbar all messages selected, some messages, and no messages, right? I'm going to start with no messages selected. So I clicked on that, and it pulled up this bar here. It pulled up this template, or not template, but the HTML for it. I guess it is kind of like a template. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to paste it in to our toolbar template.html. Okay, save that, and now we have a toolbar component, and we have a toolbar template. Bless you. However, we're missing something.
HTML script tag.
Yeah, that's the one, yeah. All right, we need to get a script tag in here for that component. So script that baby. Source equals, and then what is it? JS toolbar that can't spell JS. Sorry guys. All right, here we go. Okay, so now we're pulling in the script tag for the component. That's great, but we still have to reference that component, right? Bless you. Okay, what was the name of our tag that we made? Tool-bar. And that goes above message-inbox. I'm just going to show you this. This isn't the way that I did it, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But just to let you guys, I like to make sure that it's working, that everything is coming out good. So I'll do toolbar, got to use that kebab case. Yeah, everybody hungry. Okay. I love kebabs. All right, great. So as you can see, we're pulling in the information, and it is now correctly displaying the toolbar at the top of the page, right? The only weird thing is like this little bit here, like there's supposed to be like an empty square right here, right? Oh, and a trash bin on this side right here, right? It's supposed to be a little trash bin and a thing over here. They're using, in the code, they're using, I believe it's one of the modules, Font Awesome is what they're using. Is there a link for that?
I got it.
Do you have it? Do you guys want to Slack it out? Because I've been using, yeah, that's what I've been using. Yeah, if you guys could Slack that out to me, that'd be great. I'll totally continue this.
Clark, please send it.
I got it.
Cool, thanks.
So, I just want to reiterate right here, the reason that I put it outside, or the reason I put it above message inbox is because that's where we wanted it, right? However, we're not communicating the two components yet. They're not talking. The way to get them to talk to one another is you need them to be nested within, one of them needs to be nested within the other one, is one way, and that's parent to child component, right? So if you cancel that out and we go into the message template, right? Up above, before we do the ng repeat, otherwise it'll make one for each message that's in the thing, we're going to paste in toolbar, okay? Just like that. And we'll save the index. Yes! Yes, Clark! Yes! Okay, I'm just going to link this in.
Good.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, MVP.
Nice.
Stop.
Sorry.
Great, we're getting those clip accounts. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Where'd you put it? Which
Oh, I'm sorry. So we're trying to pull the component toolbar and we're pasting it into our message template.
message?
The reason we're doing this is because toolbar doesn't have access to the component messages, right? The only template that has access to that information is messages, the message template. And you can see that right here. It's calling the messages component as CTRL. Of course, we could do that in here, and we could put like div ng controller blah, but toolbar is going to have its own controller, and we'll get to that. We will definitely get to that. In fact, let's get to that right now. So in here, we're going to create, huh?
I'm scared.
He says with a smile. Controller, right? .js. So we created a controller. How do we write a controller JS file? Angular.module. And what module? Okay. Same thing as before. We're going to do .controller. We're going to initialize that this is the controller. What do we want to name this controller? Like toolbar
Controller?
troll
Troll, I like it.
troll. All right. We're gonna name troll, and we're gonna pull in a function, and we'll just call it like a toolbar fun. Toolbar fun. Yeah, we're having fun, guys. Okay, so this is just the name that we're gonna be calling this function. So let's pull in that function. Function. We're gonna create it. Toolbar fun. Boom. Has no parameters, and it's standard function. What is the first thing that we do when we create a controller function? Const. Const what? Const vm that shit. Yes. Yes, thank you. Yes. All right. So what's the next thing that we do? Oh, wait, you know what? I think I might be getting a little too far ahead of myself. Okay. Actually, no. No. What I want to do is I want to be able to pull information from the previous controller and console log it. That's all I want to do. I just want to make sure I'm making the bridge from the previous controller, from the parent component to the child component correctly. So all I want to do is I'm just going to say vm.test, right? This is just going to be a test, and it's going to be a function. This is how you write your functions inside of a controller. You do vm.test is equal to function, and then you can pass in a parameter. The parameter in this case is going to be male, because we want to make sure that male is being displayed. We will then log male, right? And that is the whole purpose of this function, is just to test to make sure that we have made the bridge correctly between our parent component and our child component. Okay? The toolbar is our child component. Okay? Now, back in our toolbar template, we need to pull the toolbar toolbar controller and make it available to the template. How do we do that?
ng controller.
Yes, yes, that is exactly it. What I like to do is, first step when pulling in a controller, so I like to make its own div, right? We don't need a class, right? That way I know that this div's purpose is just to have the controller set up. ng controller is equal to troll. Yeah, love it. I love that name so good. So good. Oh, it's still going. Okay. Okay, so there we are. I'm going to just highlight this whole thing and tab it over. Okay. Oh, I'm missing a little bit at the end of this. What is it? As CTRL. This is important in some aspects. It is important to do toolbar or troll as, if it's a long name. I'm sure we could just keep it as troll because it's so small. Or what's up?
If you
Short.
left it as troll, would you just just use troll instead of control.
Yes, exactly. Do you want to test that out? I do. Let's do that. Okay. So we're going to keep it as troll. What's good, girl?
When you do the ask CTRL, is that only for this template?
Yes.
And so you can't access that in a different file?
No,
Cool.
no. But I'm going to show you how to access that information from a different file. What we want to do is, you know what I want to do? Is on this button for the square, right? It's for this square right here. This is supposed to select everything that's in that array, right? So when I click this, I want it to make every single thing that's not selected, right? But I want to make sure that this is like even just set up correctly. I'm just opening up my dev tools. Yeah, I know. It's like, you didn't script tag the troll. I'm like, I know. Okay, so let's do that. Script tag the troll. I'm just gonna copy this, create a copy of it. Oh, wait, no, that was the wrong shortcut. Okay. Command Shift D. And then here we're gonna put controller. Okay. So now we're pulling in the toolbar controller, which is important for our troll, because that's what we're naming the controller. Do I have to? No, because this is the reference. Yeah, it's happy. It's happy as pie. Okay. So, what I want to do is I want to pass in the information from the parent controller, the parent component, into the child component. The way you do that is I'm going to go back to the parent controller or the parent component's template, and inside here I'm going to modify this entity, the toolbar entity. Okay? We're going to give a variable, right? It's basically it's almost like writing a class or like like the ng repeat, a type. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to have mail, and we're going to pass into mail from this controller, right? We're going to pass in CTRL mail. Okay? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to send the mail data that has everything inside of it, like the subject, what's selected, what isn't selected, and what labels it has, all into the child component. And we're going to reference that as mail. So now, to make this accessible and make a two-way binding to it, we have to create a binding. We do that by going to the toolbar component. Whatever entity you're trying to implement this data in, we're going to go to its component. And after template URL, give a comma, and then we're going to make a bindings object. So an object within an object, essentially. This is the place where you're going to reference the name of the variable that you're trying to pass the information into. In this case, our variable name is mail. Mail, and we're going to set mail equal to a string. And Angular has, because it's Google and they're great, they have decided what variables are going to equal what, and they're just kind of like random AF. There's equal to, there's less than, and there's this one, Anderson, and there's an at, and there's an at. This one, for the sake of this project, and right now in this instance, we're going to be using an equal sign. The equal sign establishes a two-way binding, correct. I like to think of it as like exactly what you did, like two arrows. And what that allows you to do is it allows anything that happens in this component to modify what happened in the parent component as well. If it was just the less than sign, then we'd be able to access that information but not change anything. Only the parent component can change that. In this instance, we are going to change that shit. Okay, so we got that. We've now established that, and now we have the information coming in from the messages controller. That array of objects is now available. But in order to utilize that information, this is the important part too. This is really interesting. I love this. Bashed my head against the keyboard for like 5 days and then figured it out. It was fun. Okay, So, and I give mad props to you two, to Mike and Dave, because they totally helped me figure this out. It was incredible. Like, I did a dance and I threw a chair. It was great. So inside this button, we want to give it a command that when this is clicked, we want to run a function. Angular has its, you know how in standard HTML you would do onClick and then the function? Angular has the same thing, but it's ngClick instead of onClick. So we're going to do ngClick. The reason we're doing ngClick is because we want to access other information that Angular has, such as mail. Inside of here, right, we're going to say troll, because that's the name of the controller that we have. Troll, dot, and then the name of our function, which was test, right? Now, inside of here, this is where things get interesting. We use a global variable, which is the $. And we're going to say that the parent controller, like whatever was passed in, you know, into mail, it's going out and it's going to component and saying, what do you want, right? And we're going to pass in the CTRL. Maybe it's just mail. We'll see. CTRL.mail. The reason I ask if it's going to be CTRL versus just mail is because up here we did not define this as CTRL. So this might break, but it might not. I'm really excited. Let's find out. Okay, so everything was saved. This is reloaded because light server is the best. And if we click over here, see, it doesn't work. So I wonder if we take away that mail. Nope. What if we referenced it as troll.mail? Ooh, that didn't work either. Let's do this as CTRL. Now maybe it'll work. So we're definitely passing in to ngClick. Oh. Let's check it out. Toolbar fun. Test equals function mail. Oh, good. Okay, so I guess you do need the CTRL for your component. So any controller you make, just good standard practice, do the as CTRL. It didn't work before. Troll, maybe it'll work if I did troll here. Troll and then troll again. Troll. Nope. So yes, as CTRL, you need that. And then you reference within that controller the test, and then you reference out here CTRL. And then this is pulling from the previous component. The $sign is a global variable that allows you to use information that you've passed in. And then if you go back here and you click, you see that you've got all this information here. And it's like, yay, ugh, so pretty. All right, so we're getting all this information. This is great, but we want to make it so that it's all selected, right? Really easy function. We can totally do this. All right, first thing we need to do is, oh wait, you know, before I keep going, is everybody caught up? Any questions?
Now what exactly is the accessing that $CTRL.mail? Like, where is that pulling this from again?
So it's saying this is basically pulling from the bindings that you've made. So like if I were to establish this as Hans, how do you spell Han Solo? Oh man, okay, Luke, Sky, Java. Okay, we're doing Java. Huh?
Two B's in Java.
Poop. It's not poop, guys. You made me revert back to my old ways. And you go to component, it's going to be whatever's referenced here, and also whatever's referenced here. It's just a placeholder. It's just a placeholder. Whatever you define here is what you're going to pull into your component and define here as what kind of binding you want it to be. and then inside of your template, you're going to reference that with a $sign and then the name of that. Okay? Do you see the pathway that we made to get there? Yes. What's up, Dave?
So $sign is referencing the parent controller.
Oh, yes, in a sense. Yeah. If you do just like a standard CTRL, will it work? Undefined. So yes, you do need, for anything that you're pulling in from another controller or another component, you want to use the $sign. If it's inside of that template and you already have that controller pulled, or like up here we have troll, you're just going to reference it as CTRL. And but anything that you're pulling in from other components, you need the $sign CTRL. Okay. So yeah, that was fun. Any other questions? What's up?
Would you spend 5 seconds on each of your files just real quick to see where I think I missed one important time case step.
Sure.
Just start at the top, like I said, 5 seconds, I'll be able to tell.
Okay. So this is our message component. Inside of here, we have our inbox, our message inbox component, which is what we're labeling it, and then the template location. The next is the controller, where we define what the module we're working with, the name of the controller that we're going to be displaying or referencing in our template, and then what function is going to be what we're referencing. Okay? Yes?
This is for setting up CSS.
And then this one, this is just the message template right here, right? This is where we pulled in our child component structure, or its template, and we're passing into it the from this message component, or from this message controller, sorry, we're pulling in the mail object into that, the mail array of objects. Down here in our toolbar component, we are still referencing our main module. We're creating a component called toolbar, and this is the URL for that. Underneath, we're establishing the binding that we made when we passed in the information from the messages template, and we're giving it a two-way binding. Down in controller, toolbar controller, pardon me, we are basically, all we did was make a function, and we called it test just to make sure that we are passing information correctly to it. We're referencing it, everything inside of this as VM, so vm.test, and blah, 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 blah. And then down here, we have our toolbar controller, where we reference CTRL as troll as CTRL, pardon me. And then down here, where we established our Angular click function, we're passing in CTRL test, which is going to just console log whatever's in its parameters, and we're passing in the binding from the previous component in there. Not the binding. We're pulling in the array of objects that we made a connection to. And we have a two-way binding on that, which allows us to modify the information and display it again. Did you miss anything else? We have an app.js. Did you do this? Did you pull in the controller and the component for toolbar?
So you had, you changed it to poops,
Yes.
and in only 2 spots?
I changed it here. I changed it in the component.
Fine.
What's Java?
Oh, where's Java?
Jamba. What is Jamba?
Jamba juice? I mean,
Where are we?
I just made it up.
Okay.
Did I have Jamba somewhere?
Just in your message.template.js. I thought maybe it was like
Oh, yeah. That's really interesting, actually. Oh, yeah, right here. I'm establishing on repeat that I'm going to be referencing everything inside CTRL mail, inside that array. I'm going to reference it as Jamba. So this, again, is just a placeholder. And then you can see it working here as Jamba.selected and Jamba.selected down here. If we go back to our toolbar controller, No, our message controller. You will see, where is it? Message controller. Okay. You will see here something really interesting. What is the difference between this iteration and this iteration? Besides the labels. Yes. Yeah. There's a selected in there. We, in order to change if everything is selected or not selected, we want to add selected false to anything that doesn't already have selected in it, right? This way, we can modify that information and display it again on the screen. So I'm just gonna Control-C that, copy it, and then I'm just gonna add it to the end of starred. Right here. Oh wait, that's true. We want false. False. False babies. Okay. Okay, so false, star true, select false, selected true, so we don't do that one. Selected false, selected false, selected false, selected false. Okay. So now that anything that's not selected now has an attribute selected, and it's equal to false, right? Of course, it doesn't change anything on our screen, right? Except for when you click, it now highlights. Right? And that's because of our ng model hookup, our binding that we made there. ng model selected, and now everyone has selected, and when that's true, and it brings it up. Hey! So that's cool. ng selected is just referencing the value of selected, and so it changes from false to true. And with that binding, it affects the CSS of that class. So, okay. Moving on, I just want to show you how the child component can manipulate the parent component, and we're going to do that in the following function. What I want to do with that is in the toolbar controller with our test thing right here. We'll keep it as test. That was just a placeholder, but we're already using it in our other in our template, and so I don't want to change that because I'm lazy. So I just want to show you guys how to change that information with the click of the button. So we're going to create a for loop, and we're just going to go through mail. Shoot, that's it. Just like that, right? And then we're going to reference each instance inside mail, selected, right? And we're just going to set it equal to true. And that's all you need to do, right? Now back in the main page, when you click this, boom, it's all selected. Whoa. Yeah, all right. So we went over ng if. We did not go over ng if, did we? This is great. Let's go over ng if.
Can we,
Yes.
can I get what you just did one more time?
Sure. Okay. So
What document are you
I'm in toolbar controller. Inside of this, I've created a function that will iterate through the length of mail, and it will change the information from selected to true.
So I'm not, well, when I click that button, it doesn't select all.
Were you able to console log?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is yours working right now? Select all.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Array. Oh, yeah. This.
So
Got it.
cool. Awesome. Awesome sauce. Now we're going to move on to a really important thing in Angular. I'm so excited to talk about this because it's so important. I used it all the time. Holy crap. Every time. And it took me like 4 hours that day to figure out how to actually work it. It's a function in Angular called ngIf, which takes an expression, and if that expression is true, it will display the information, it will display the object or whatever you're trying to display on the screen. If it's not true, then it won't display. But there's a big difference between ngIf and ngShow. Just to do a little rant, ngIf will completely remove the object or the element in HTML. It will completely remove that element from the virtual DOM or the shadow DOM. There's two different names for it. I've heard it different. The other way, the ng show will just hide it. It'll make the CSS display none, but it is still on the DOM. As well as ng hide does that as well. So the big difference between those two things is that one is hidden and one is completely removed. The if statement completely removes it. And it's super helpful. So I'm going to show you guys how to use ng if now, because it's another really big thing. We went over ng repeat, we went over ng click, and ng controller. All right, so let's do the ng if. Okay, so down here where we have this button, right? We're going to write an ng if statement. ng-if, right? And we're going to pass in an expression. If this expression is true, then we're going to display the information. Now, I know that this square O is just supposed to be like if nothing is selected, right? If nothing is selected, we're going to display this. So, interesting thing is we have to create a new function that we're going to pass into ng if to tell us the total selected elements in the array. How many of them have a selected true value? Okay? So, where would we do that? The controller. Yeah, that's where we're going to write all of our functions and everything that's manipulating the data passed in here. And we're going to go to the troll. Okay, so here we are. Can anybody set me off here? How do we write a function in Angular, in the controller? How do we write this? VM.whatever equals function. No, let's make this like something. All right, we'll name this total selected. Right? Total selected is equal to a function. And what do we want to pass into that? Yeah! The mail! You got mail, bitch. All right, so within this, what do we want to do? We want to iterate through each instance in mail and see if selected is true, right? Okay, so let's do that. Okay, for mail and mail. What do we want to do? We want to go into selected. You know what? No. We should make a counter, right? That counts the number of things that are selected inside of mail, right? So we'll say var count dooku. Is that how you spell his name? Is that right?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Count dooku. All right, and we're gonna set that equal to 0. Okay. And then inside of this, we're gonna write an if statement. If true, exactly. If mail, this iteration of mail dot selected equals true, we want to increment count dooku. Yeah, that's so cool. I'm nerding out, guys. I'm gonna start doing Lord of the Rings references soon. Okay, so we got count dooku. We're iterating through mail every time there's an instance where selected is true. We're adding 1 to the count. Count dooku. All right, so down here, right, we're just gonna return count dooku. Okay, cool. We can now use this inside of our template. So if we go back to our toolbar template, okay, back in our ng if statement, this is what really pissed me off, was because for a long time, you know how over here with ng click, we just did ctrl test, right? You can't do that with ng if. You need parentheses. Yeah, you need parentheses. Otherwise, it's a little schoolgirl that's ambivalent and doesn't know what she wants. And just okay. Okay, no. Angular is great. So inside of this, we're going to say ctrl. We're going to pull in that new function we made, total selected. total selected, and we're gonna pass in mail, right? What is that? How are we doing that? We don't have mail readily accept.
$sign.
Yep.
CTRL.
And then whatever you name that variable that you're passing in. In this case, we did poop. And we're gonna say if this function is equal to 0, display this, right? Else, fucking just don't display it, right? I saved it already. I'm sorry, did you say something? Question?
Why did you make it equal to 0?
That's the counter.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I got you.
And if we go back here, you can see that the button is totally gone from the DOM, the virtual DOM. Not even there. But if you take off this and you take off this, it pops back up. I'm not freaking kidding you. That shit is real. You can go here, and if you click this, then everything is highlighted and everything's wonderful. But that's just one of the powers with ngIf. If you wanted to throw in another button, right? Let's do like the checkbox one. I'm just copying the last button from before, right? And I'm gonna say if it's equal to, I want to say if it's equal to the length of the array. So if everything is selected in the array, I want to be able to click it and then everything is removed, not selected anymore. And to do that, you just do ctrl mail, or poop, sorry, we did poop, dot length, right? So yeah, it's important to know the length of poop. You guys are so childish. Gosh, trying to teach here. And I believe, what is this? Is this, if we go back here, I don't exactly remember what it's called, but it's with all messages selected. It is check square O. Okay. Check square O. Right? It says right here. This is where I'm pulling that information from. Oh, let me make that bigger. So that's where I'm pulling the information from, is check square 0. And if you go back here, that's what I put right here. So that way it should be if the total selected of poop is equal to the length of poop, then we'll display this icon. Let's check and see if that worked. Did I save? It's important to save, guys. Okay. All right, so we'll unclick just because this is the easiest way. Okay, we got the 1. We'll click again, and boom. Now we have that beautiful checkbox. This is something that I thought about last night, actually, because I remember we had that function, right? This is a way around that bug. Is like you, where you pull in the ng click, you just, like I had labeled this as select all. You just write another function, select none. Right? And then you just, right in here, you basically just copy this, right? Rename this to select none, and then make it false. What? Toolbar template. Right here. So what I did, just to reiterate, was this is what we originally had. We said that if it's equal to 0, if the length is equal to 0, then, or if total selected is equal to 0, then display this. Else, there is no else. If that's correct, we're going to display it. If not, then do not display it, if that's not true. The next statement, if this is true, display this. And what it's saying is, if the total selected is equal to the length of the array or the object, then it will be great and it will display this. There's also one more that we need, and that's for if it's greater than 0 or less than the length. And then that would display like the one with the minus in the middle. But you use the same concept, the same thing. What's up, Clark?
So does it assume that if it evaluates the ngIf as true, then it displays that one?
Yes.
Okay.
If it's false, it will not display. So like you can see that happening over here. Like when we
You don't
refresh the
even explicitly state that to display it. They just didn't see anything that said like quote display.
one more time. What's the
Can
question?
I see that page?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm saying, so what ngIf is saying is
Yeah.
ngIf this expression is true. If this expression is true, then display this. It doesn't say display, but
Right. So it assumes display.
yes, if it's,
It's an attribute of button saying.
thank you,
like,
attribute. That's what that word is.
if- like saying if this statement is true, then this button exists. Otherwise, it doesn't.
Right.
Thank you,
Yeah. So
Liz.
there's a condition, but there's not a like there's not like a body of like display this. You know what I mean? Like, in JavaScript,
It's just
it
talking
has
about
two
how-
parts, and this is just assuming the second part. So that's what I was trying to clarify.
I also want to tell you guys too that remember in JavaScript when you write a typical if statement, you can say if this or this with like the two bars, or you can say if this and this is true, right? You can use those same expressions inside ngIf. Just make sure they're in the parentheses, right? Parentheses, and then you can do whatever. That's how I did the in between having none selected and having all selected. Is I had a totally other button, it had an ngIf in there, and then said that if it's greater than 0, total length is greater than 0, and total length is less than. I did like the length minus 1, right? Yeah, I did something like that. Is less than the total length of the array, then display this button. Same kind of concept. I just want to iterate again that ngIf and ngShow behave the same in some aspects, but are totally different. In that ngShow will just display none, whereas ngIf will remove it from the document, the virtual DOM. So we went through a few things. We went through ngRepeat, we went through ngIf, and then another really big one was ngOptions, which we went over earlier, right? I really want to go over that as well. So it's great that we have all these things like displaying on the screen, right? But where are the labels? Where are the freaking labels? I know where they are. Haha. They're in the message controller. So if you go here, you can see that, hey, yeah, we're getting labels, and we have them. They're displaying. They're not displaying, but they're there, right? They're in our seeds. Let's try to display these on the screen, okay? If we go back to our message template, right, which is where we're pulling this information from, right? It doesn't have it listed in here. However, if you go back to your seeds or to the components that they gave us, if you go down, oh wow, you did not want to do that. Message with labels. You can see here that under this div here, they have a new span. They have a span right here, right? And this just basically displays the label. We don't have this, right? In our thing, and just like the messages with nothing, it doesn't have that. So we need to add that into our template in order to display it. The interesting thing about this is you don't need more than one, because we already have a function in Angular that iterates through an array. What's that function? What is that method? Repeat? Yes! It is! Yeah, sorry guys, so sorry. Okay, so we can use Angular's repeat function, or method, built-in method. And we're going to cycle through an array. We know that each instance of mail, right, because we're referencing mail as, Jamba. We're referencing every instance in controller mail as Jamba. And we know that each instance, right, I keep going back there, I'm so sorry. We know that each instance has labels in it. And labels are essentially an array, right? So we want to iterate through those arrays. You can do that with ngRepeat as well. So what I did was I added a span with the class label warning, right? And we're going to add the Angular repeat method, okay? Now, how do you think that we're going to reference the mail? How are we going to reference the...
Did you want to use repeat there since you're already repeating the same div?
You can, yes. The reason I want to is because the object that is being displayed, because each instance is making a new, like each instance in the array is making a new message box. And so you can do another ng repeat inside. You just have to be very specific about what you want to repeat. Of course, repeat does, it will iterate through an array and display the information you want. So,
Kind of like a for loop within a for loop.
yeah, exactly. I wouldn't want to do this if the key in the object wasn't an array. Then I wouldn't do ng repeat. But I want to get that information, I want to display it. Because this instance in this array, what is that called? Jamba, right? Where each instance in this array is called Jamba. So we're going to say, we're going to repeat label, right, in Jamba dot label, because labels, right? Because how does ng repeat work? We define what we're going to call every instance that we iterate through with a variable, with a placeholder. In this case, we did label. We could do something like Jamba or Bilbo. Yes. I'm so happy I got that in. Okay, so now we're saying that each instance in Jamba.labels, which is over here, you can see this is just one instance, right? Here's another instance. This one's better. In this instance, we have a label. We have one label, right? And we're going to be referencing this label, each instance in this label, as Bilbo. Yeah. So inside here, instead of dev, we put, I believe it's just 2 handlebars, and then Bilbo. Repeat Bilbo in Jamba dot.
Biblo.
Ha! I'm so sorry, Bilbo. Okay, so it should work. Let's check it out. Yay! So now we have labels coming up, right? This is great. This is fantastic stuff. This is what we wanted, right? This next part is where we're going to start implementing the options, the ng option bit, okay? Few different ways to do it. The way that I found best is as follows, all right? I'm going to just close all these out because I think there are too many tabs, and I like to view this as like a new user story, and I like to start fresh. So, starting fresh, right, we have displaying on our screen the different messages that are in our mail, the subjects at least, and then anything that's selected is already pre-selected. Great stuff. If you unselect it, you do this thing, right, and then if you select it all, it's like, woo, right? But we want to be able to add a label. Oh, this will be fun too. We can deal with that. That's just another ng if. Anyways, getting a little ahead of myself. The ng options, huh?
I'm sorry. I see message template.
Message template. Template. Right down here.
How's Jamba.labels
Grabbing that data.
that array?
Because
An object.
how ng repeat works, right, is we define a placeholder that we're going to call each instance in that array, we're going to call something. And then we tell it where that array is. In this instance, we called it Jamba. So Jamba itself is just an iteration through ng repeat. And then inside that iteration, it had an array labeled labels. We called each instance inside of that Bilbo, and then we displayed Bilbo.
Yeah, I'm in line with all that. It's just
It's not
not working.
working?
Yeah, probably has to type it.
Is everybody else's working? Where you guys at?
I got something, but it's just better to go about it this way.
Oh, right.
So,
Okay.
that's broken.
Okay. Are you able to select things?
Yeah, we can, I mean, yeah, that's.
Okay, we good. We go. When we're done, I'll totally.
Oh,
you guys.
right.
Cool.
We'll see you. I feel bad. Places. Places. Okay. So, the first thing we want to be able to do is be able to pull, like we want to be able to click this, and we want to be able to click this. The reason we can't is because what we're cycling through, or what we're using here, is when something is not selected, right? When nothing is selected, we're displaying that information, right? We can fix that with a method that we already learned. What is that method? Close. Yeah, that's the one. We're going to do an if. If nothing is selected, we're going to display this toolbar. If things are selected, we're going to display another toolbar. Fun stuff, right? It's a lot of sweat and tears here. Okay, so what we can do is we can just create a div, right? Up at the top, right? We're going to do a div here. We'll give it an ng if statement, and we're going to set that equal to this if statement right here. If it's equal to 0, right, then display this toolbar where nothing is able to be selected, right?
You just put an ng if in that new div you just made.
I did. And I set it equal to this if down here, this if statement. Okay? This goes down, and then it goes over, and then this also goes over with that. Okay. So now we're not displaying it on the screen, which is exactly what we wanted, right? If we go back over to the inbox style guide and pick toolbar with some messages selected, which is really the only one we need because this one is basically the same as this one except for the thing is changed on the side, right? So pick either one of those. We're going to copy and scream. We're going to copy and scream, and then we're going to paste that right down here. After the div, after this div, right? That's this one. Total selected, if, right? Outside that last if div that we made, we're going to paste this div. And then, of course, with this div, we want to make another conditional, right? We want to say, if this div, right, ng if, yes, just like that. And I'm actually just gonna, from the first div that we made, I'm gonna say this same ng if statement, but I'm gonna say instead of equal to 0, I'm gonna say greater than 0. If it's greater than 0, then display this. If this is greater than 0, right, then display this brilliant motherfucking shit. And then we have to add a div statement. Oh, you can do this. Ooh. Okay. Damn, I think I like totally blew this out of the water. That's okay. All right. So, yes. Let's see if it worked. Hallelujah. So we are getting things, right? If this is greater than 0, we're displaying that. And then if it's 0, you'll see it won't disappear, it'll just change. And then now you can't select anything. Okay? And that was one of the user stories that we had to complete for this project. Okay? But what I wanted to show you that when something is selected, you're able to go over here and you see a drop down, right? You couldn't do this before because it wasn't allowed, right? Nothing, that was the only one that's selected. Is everybody a follow? Everybody up to this point?
I need this.
Get a second.
Can you go back to the toolbar template?
Yes. This is the toolbar template.
So you just copy and pasted this section, then you added a div with this ng if and made it greater than 0.
Yes. Yes. If that total selected is greater than 0, then display this, right? So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to go down this page and it's going to say, is total selected equal to 0? And if it is, then it's going to display this. If it doesn't equal 0, it'll delete that and go to the next thing. If control.total selected is greater than 0, if this is true, then display this. And that's what it do. That what it do.
Did you paste all that from the
Sorry.
from the style guide? Is that like a repeat of everything, or did you replace it?
For what?
It's a repeat.
So I have it underneath trash out.
Yes.
You messed it up.
So it'd be like this div, this end div is going to be the first ng if. It has to be outside of that ng if, otherwise it'll be deleted with it or removed with it.
So what is it that changes in the next one? Like what is the actual difference that you put in for that second if?
For the second if,
Yeah.
I said if it was greater than 0.
Right.
So
but
the-
what within that div
Is different? Oh, so in the other one, you can see here that it's disabled. This is disabled, this is disabled, all these are disabled, right? So you can't click anything. You can't get a drop-down menu. And that's what I want to get, is a drop-down menu so I can show you guys NG options, okay? So that's the difference between the two, is that these ones aren't disabled. That's all. We're going to work within this first select class. We're going to go right here to this, select entity, I guess it's called. Select tag.
Element, and this
Thank
is,
you, that one, yeah.
And this is within the if greater than 0.
If greater than 0, correct. So we're at the if greater than 0 select class. The fun thing about Angular is it has a built-in option, a built-in method to generate options, okay? To utilize that, the first thing we need to do is in our controller, we have to establish what is going to be passed in, or what the labels are within our controller, because we won't be displaying them like this. These you can just get rid of. Not necessary. This first option, leave the apply label. We'll get to that. But the first thing we want to do is go to our toolbar controller. Okay? Now inside here, right, after VM total, right, we're going to create something. Can somebody walk me through the process of how to create a new array of objects within a controller? Think about our mail. How is that set up?
So you're going to create a function and name it label if you want to. So you put name.label equals function and pass it name. Not a function. But
Not a function.
a variable.
Yeah, basically it's going to be just a variable, and we'll name this like all labels, right? Give it that, and then all labels is an array, and it's going to be of objects, right? The first thing I like to do is give the ID, and that'll be 1, right? Comma that, and then over here we're going to do label. We're going to name it label. And then it's going to be, I believe the first one was what? What was the first one? Dev. So we got dev, personal, and gscope. Dev, okay, comma, and then we'll make the next one. Command-Shift-D to duplicate. I just duplicated it twice. Make sure to remove the comma on the last object. And then we're going to say the second one, we're going to label as 2 for the ID. And then the label is going to be personal, because it's personal. And then this one is school. G-School. Okay. So, oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Yes. Okay. So, within toolbar controller, we just established a new variable called all labels. And we're giving it an array. We're setting it equal to an array of objects, which holds our labeled data in it. Oh, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Guys, make these strings. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Does this part need to be a string?
No, it doesn't, but
It won't break it? Okay. So that's great. We've now made this. If we go back to our toolbar template, okay, this is where we're going to start using our ng options. It's going to be right in our select. Right in our select, we're going to do ng options. And we're going to set it equal to, you know how we do it, like other ways. And this, the first one is what value. Okay, so options kind of takes on the same form as ng repeat, except for before it starts iterating through, it asks you what you want the value to be and what you want it to be displayed as in the dropdown. So in this instance, right, let's just write out what a typical repeat statement would look like first, just to get like how to format it. What is the format of an ng repeat statement? The first thing we do is we create a placeholder that we're going to define each iteration as, right? So each iteration of this array is an object, right? And we'll just give it label in, and then we're going to go to our ctrl dash all labels, right? Because it's in our controller that we defined all labels, which has all labels. Funny that, huh? But that's not enough. It's good that we've established that each iteration is going to be called label, right? Before this statement now is where we define the value and then what it's displayed as. So the value is going to be label, right? Label dot, which is that iteration, and then what you want the value to be. It won't be the ID, but it will definitely be the label, right? Is going to be the value. And then is it as label dot label. The reason we do label dot label again, I know it's
Label.label as label.label.
Yes. Label dot label is the value of the option.
Label 5 tags. Come on.
Oh man, you should have seen. Yeah, for sure. For, okay, and that is your typical setup. At the end of this, it's good to add track by label.id. Otherwise, it might yell at you and throw a hissy fit because we all know what Angular is, right? Oh, I said it before. Yeah, we'll love it.
And that's options.
And that's options. Okay.
So, real quick, could you explain again what the label.label as label.label is?
Yes, I totally can. I want to check to make sure that the code worked before I start explaining like what's going on. Ooh, see? So what am I missing here? What am I missing? Label.label as label.label for. Is this the same format that?
Yeah, actually, I used label as label.label instead of label.label as label.
Yeah, I was gonna say the dot doesn't make any sense there.
But
because
it's
we're
still-
not accessing any.
It did still work, so I'm not sure why label as label.label for label and control.labels tracked by label.id.
Are you using control as your placeholder in this? So you scroll up.
Let me go back to the controller. All labels, okay. And then this is looking right. So we have ng options, label as, I just want to get like, let's look at the options documentation on this in Angular. AngularJS, wait, and then I think it's docs in front of this.
equals labels.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
ng model equals labels. Oh yeah, I did selected, right? We'll do labels. Labels. Labels is great. Awesome. So we are getting this stuff. Now I will show you why it's important to do label label.label as label.label. And that's because we will run a new function for every time something is selected, right? Another interesting function method that Angular has is ngChange, which is basically if anything changes, we're going to run this expression. We're going to run whatever's in this. ngChange is equal to let's make a what's it called? We'll have to make a function. So sorry. Go back to your your toolbar controller. I'm so sorry, guys. I know this is like a lot of information, and I know this has gone on for a long time, but you know, this video will be a resource for you, and you can totally use it whenever. And we've gone over a lot of really good functions and methods inside.
This is amazing.
Thank you.
Keep doing.
Keep going. Okay, so we're going to write a function. Can somebody walk me through how to create a standard function within Angular?
Now you need to tell it what it's going to be called.
Okay. We will put here just like Frodo, because you know, names are great, and it's a function, right? The function I don't want to pass anything into it. Oh wait, yes I do. I do want to pass things into it. I want to pass it what's been selected, right? That's what I want to pass into that. In here, I just want to log selected. Whatever was passed in, I want to log it out, okay? This is where, oh, I'm sorry. Do you need this still? Okay. So this is where, what did I do? This thing, okay. So this is where label.label comes into play. And you'll see it as when this happens. For ngChange, we're gonna run a function. We're gonna go into our controller that we've already established, and we're gonna call Frodo, which is our function, right? We're gonna pass into it selected. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The ng model, because that is what is bound to the select element, right? So whatever the select element equals is going to be bound to the name labels. So we're going to pass in labels here. Okay. So I saved that. If you go back here and you click this, you see that we're getting an array back, right? The reason you want to do label.label is because you're referencing each instance. How do I say this? It's just better if you see it, right?
So basically, where you did like the label in
You see?
whatever, then you're just like each instance is called label. So you're
Yes.
saying I want the instance,
The value,
instance, and
yes.
then this property called label within that instance.
Yes. So you're saying here, right? This is the same format as a regular ng repeat statement, where you give it a placeholder for each instance inside of this array, right? For each iteration in that array, you're giving it this name. You're then referencing this over here, and this first statement, this first little bit, is what the value is for each option that is dropped down. And you want that option to be the label, right? As this part is what is being displayed in the dropdown. So for instance, if I did label.id here, right? If you go back here, you see that it's 1, 2, 3, right? If you come back here and you put just label, it's going to do the objects. Object, 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 object.
So out of all of those labels that we have, can any of them be changed to something else, or do they all have to be the same word? You have 1, 2,
Oh,
3, 4,
yes.
5.
Let's
6.
rename this. We will rename this, and let's use like a really good naming convention, like this apply, a for label, right? We'll just do apply label. Is that better?
Yeah.
Or do you want to do name? Let's do name. Name is way better. Name. For name of the label, inside control all labels is what we're going to be referencing. So then over here, you would change this to name and this to name because it's pulling this information. It's pulling in what the name of what the value is of each instance, and you're going to display it as name.label, the whatever's in that object. Okay? And then on each change, the ng change is what allows us to run this function every time the select is changed. Every time you select a new option in that. And you see that like this. So you see G school. If you refresh, wow, why did it do that? Why did you do that? Whatever. If you set this value, fun bit, if you set this value equal to just an empty string like this, it is then displayed as null, and it will appear as the first instance in the options. And you can see that. Why did it not change? Oh, save. That's important. But you can see apply labels right here. But you can't, it's not doing anything because it's null. You see that? Over here, we're console logging that it's null. You go to personal, yeah. Oh,
Just pop in G school.
why did it come up G school? Oh, right here. Name. Name.id. And now it starts out with label. You can go to G school. You go to personal. Is personal. And we got dev. With this, you can use this kind of function. Now that you know that you're passing that information correctly, you can then push this information into that array of that instance, right? Whatever you selected. So you cycle through, say, if this is selected, and if this selected is true, then for that same instance, mail I dot labels dot push selected, or whatever you pass into that function. And that's how you would add new labels in as well. I think that covered everything. All the main functions that you really need to make this whole app work, we went over. We went over ng repeat, which is a big one. We went over ng if, which is another big one. We went over ng options, which you could see like how confusing that can be. Just look through the documentation and you're like, what? But once you get it, it works. I just recommend that you guys just kind of practice on your own. If you guys come across any issues or anything like that, have questions, please feel free to ask me. I will be around, and you know what? I would love, because we already, we're having a breakout tomorrow. But is there any questions before I end this lecture? Besides an applause. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, guys. Yeah. I know. Keep going. No. No, but seriously, is there any questions? Dope.